My name is Amanda, and at 32 years old, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. That was until I received that text message 5 hours before my brother Jason's wedding. Do not go to the wedding. Check your husband's garage first. Read the cryptic warning from an unknown number. I laughed it off as a prank, but something made me curious enough to look. With shaking hands, I unlocked the garage door and stepped inside. What I discovered made my blood turn to ice. If you are watching this, let me know where you are viewing from and hit that like and subscribe button before I reveal the shocking truth that changed everything that day. I should probably start from the beginning to help you understand just how devastating that discovery truly was. Like I said, my name is Amanda, and I had been married to Eric for 5 years. We met during my final year of college at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to genuinely care about my dreams and ambitions. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I did not hesitate to say yes. Our wedding was small but beautiful, and I truly believed we were building the perfect life together. My brother Jason is 3 years older than me. He has always been my protector, my confidant, and my best friend. Growing up, we relied on each other heavily, especially after our parents' bitter divorce when I was 15 and he was 18. That experience left deep scars on both of us. Jason became somewhat cynical about marriage, while I became determined to find a stable, loving relationship that would last. Jason met Stephanie during their sophomore year at university. They dated for almost 4 years before a job opportunity took Stephanie across the country to California. Long distance proved too difficult, and they broke up. For years, Jason compared every woman he dated to Stephanie. Then, through what seemed like fate, they reconnected at a college reunion 7 years after their breakup. The spark was still there, and within a year they were engaged. I was thrilled when Jason asked me to be his maid of honor. Likewise, Eric was asked to be one of the groomsmen, which made sense, since he and Jason had become close over the years. I threw myself into wedding preparations, helping Stephanie choose floral arrangements, table settings, and of course, the perfect dress. I genuinely liked Stephanie and was overjoyed that my brother had found happiness with her again. The months leading up to the wedding were hectic. Between dress fittings, bachelorette, party planning, and juggling my own demanding job as a marketing executive, I barely had time to notice the subtle changes in Eric's behavior. Looking back, the signs were there. He started coming home later, claiming he was working overtime to impress his new boss. Our conversations became shorter, more superficial. Intimacy grew rare. 3 months before the wedding, Eric and I purchased a new home in a suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes outside the city. It was a beautiful, colonial-style house with a detached garage that Eric quickly claimed as his own space for woodworking and projects. He installed a new lock on the garage door, telling me it was to keep his expensive tools safe. I never questioned it. Why would I? Trust was the foundation of our marriage. Or so I thought. During this time, my friendship with Diana deepened. We had been college roommates, and through a stroke of luck, she ended up working at the same financial consulting firm as Eric 2 years ago. Having her around was a blessing, especially when wedding stress became overwhelming. Diana would often come over for wine nights when Eric was working late, letting me vent about family drama or offering advice about the wedding. "Have you noticed Eric seems distracted lately?" Diana asked during one of our wine nights about 2 months before the wedding. "He has been working really hard," I defended, swirling the red wine in my glass. "That promotion means a lot to him." Diana nodded but did not seem convinced. "Just make sure he is not burning himself out. Ryan went through something similar last year, and it nearly ruined our marriage." I appreciated her concern but brushed it off. Eric and I were different. We communicated well. We were solid. At least, that is what I kept telling myself as the gaps between us widened into chasms I could no longer ignore. 1 month before the wedding, I found a receipt for an expensive restaurant in Eric's jacket pocket while doing laundry. When I asked him about it, he claimed it was a business dinner with clients. I believed him because I wanted to. Because the alternative meant questioning everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Marriage takes work, my mother told me during a phone call the week before Jason's wedding. She had remarried twice since divorcing my father, and seemed to consider herself an expert on the subject. Do not expect perfection, Amanda. Men will always disappoint you in some way. Her cynicism bothered me, but part of me wondered if there was some truth to her words. Was I expecting too much? Was the distance I felt between Eric and me just a normal phase that all marriages go through? These questions circled in my mind as the wedding approached, creating a backdrop of unease that I tried desperately to ignore. For Jason's sake, I needed to be present, supportive, and joyful. My own doubts and insecurities would have to wait. The night before these events unfolded, I lay awake in bed, listening to the sound of Eric's steady breathing beside me. I reached out to touch his shoulder, but stopped short, my hand hovering inches from his skin. Something held me back, a feeling I could not name. Little did I know my instincts were trying to protect me from the truth that would soon shatter my entire world. The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that Jason and Stephanie had chosen for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional food. Everyone important to the couple was there, from close family members to friends who had traveled across the country to celebrate with them. Everyone except Eric. "Where's Eric?" Jason asked as he greeted me with a hug. His eyes scanned the room behind me, looking for my husband. "Emergency at work," I explained the excuse, feeling hollow even as I said it. "He sends his apologies. Something about a client crisis that couldn't wait." Jason frowned slightly but nodded. "That's too bad. Tell him he'd better not miss the main event tomorrow," he joked. But I could see the hint of disappointment in his eyes. The dinner proceeded beautifully. Toasts were made, stories shared, and laughter filled the warm, candlelit space. Despite my best efforts to stay present, my mind kept wandering to Eric. This was the third family event he had missed in the past 2 months. Each time work was the excuse. Each time it became harder to believe. After the main course, while everyone was mingling, Jason pulled me aside onto the restaurant's small balcony. The night air was cool against my skin, a welcome relief from the stuffy interior. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the city lights. "Of course," I said, joining him at the railing. "What's on your mind?" Jason took a deep breath. "I'm scared, Mandy," he admitted, using my childhood nickname. "What if Stephanie and I are making a mistake? What if we end up like Mom and Dad?" His confession caught me off guard. Jason had always been the confident one, the one who seemed sure of every decision he made. "That won't happen," I assured him. "You and Stephanie are different. You've already been through so much together, and you found your way back to each other. If that's not fate, I don't know what is." "But what if that history is exactly the problem?" he persisted. "What if we're just clinging to the past because it's comfortable? What if we've changed too much in those 7 years apart?" I placed my hand on his arm. "Jason, every couple has doubts. It's normal to be scared, but I've seen how you look at her, how your whole face lights up when she enters a room. That's real." "Like you and Eric?" he asked, and something in his tone made my heart clench. "Yes," I lied, the words sticking in my throat. "Eric and I have our ups and downs like anyone else, but at the end of the day, we choose each other. That's what marriage is about." Jason studied my face for a moment, and I worried he could see through my facade. "You two seem different lately," he observed. "Is everything okay?" "Just busy with work and wedding prep," I deflected. "Nothing to worry about." He didn't look convinced, but thankfully, Stephanie chose that moment to join us on the balcony, slipping her arm around Jason's waist. "Stealing my fiancé, are you?" She teased, her smile warm and genuine. "Just some last-minute sibling bonding," I replied, forcing a smile. "I was telling him how lucky he is to have found you." Stephanie's eyes softened. "I'm the lucky one," she said, looking up at Jason with such apparent adoration that my earlier reassurances to my brother seemed validated. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of dessert, coffee, and more conversation. By the time I drove home, it was past 11 and I was exhausted both emotionally and physically. The house was dark when I arrived, no sign of Eric's car in the driveway. I checked my phone, finding a text he had sent an hour earlier: home soon. Don't wait up. But I did wait up, sitting in the dimly lit living room staring at my phone screen until my eyes burned. At 1 in the morning, as I was about to give up and go to bed, a message from an unknown number appeared. I know we've never met, but there's something you need to know about Eric and the wedding tomorrow. Call me. My heart raced as I read and reread the cryptic message. Who was this person? How did they get my number? And what could they possibly know about Eric and the wedding? I nearly called the number back immediately, but stopped myself. It was probably just a wrong number, or worse, someone trying to cause trouble before my brother's big day. I deleted the message and headed upstairs to bed, determined not to let paranoia get the better of me. Sleep eluded me as I tossed and turned, my mind racing with possibilities. Around 4 in the morning, I heard the front door open and close, softly followed by Eric's familiar footsteps on the stairs. I pretended to be asleep as he entered our bedroom, the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging faintly to his clothes as he slipped into bed beside me. Amanda, he whispered, are you awake? I remained still, my back to him, my eyes squeezed shut as tears threatened to escape. I'm sorry I missed the rehearsal dinner, he continued, apparently believing I was asleep. Things at work are crazy right now. I'll make it up to you and Jason. The bed shifted as he turned away from me, and within minutes his breathing deepened into sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a growing sense of dread building in my chest. Something was very wrong, and for the first time I couldn't keep pretending otherwise. The morning of my brother's wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect early autumn day that wedding planners dream about. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains, casting golden patterns across the rumpled sheets. Eric's side of the bed was empty, the covers thrown back hastily. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and saw it was already 8:30. I also saw a note from Eric propped against the lamp. Headed to Jason's early to help with setup. See you at the venue. Love you. His handwriting seemed rushed, the words trailing off at the end as if he couldn't be bothered to finish the sentiment properly. I ran my fingers over the paper, trying to feel something beyond the growing numbness that had settled in my chest overnight. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon, which gave me plenty of time to shower, do my hair, and drive to Stephanie's parents' house where the bridal party would be getting ready. I had packed my bridesmaid dress and accessories the night before, so all I needed to do was gather my things and go. As I stepped out of the shower, my phone chimed with a text message. Wrapping a towel around myself, I checked the screen and felt my heart stutter. It was from the same unknown number as last night. I know you ignored my message last night. This is not a joke or a mistake. Do not go to that wedding until you check your husband's garage. There's a spare key hidden in your mailbox. Trust me on this. You need to see for yourself. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on the bathroom counter. How did this person know about Eric's garage? About our mailbox? The specificity made it impossible to dismiss as a prank or a wrong number. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was one of Eric's friends playing a tasteless joke. Maybe someone was trying to sabotage Jason's wedding for some reason. I finished drying off and began applying my makeup, trying to focus on the steady motions of the mascara wand, the sweep of blush across my cheekbones. Normal actions for what was supposed to be a normal, joyous day. But the text message lingered in my mind, impossible to ignore completely. Once dressed in comfortable clothes for the pre-ceremony preparations, I gathered my things and headed downstairs. I hesitated at the front door, my hand on the knob. The garage was just across the driveway. It would take less than a minute to check if there was actually a key in the mailbox, and maybe another 5 minutes to look inside the garage. This is ridiculous, I muttered to myself, pulling open the front door and stepping outside. But instead of walking to my car, I found myself moving toward the mailbox at the end of our driveway. With a quick glance around to make sure none of the neighbors were watching, I opened the small metal door and reached inside. My fingers brushed against something small and cold in the back corner. A key. My heart pounded as I pulled it out, recognizing it immediately as a copy of Eric's garage key, the one he had claimed was unique and impossible to duplicate. I stared at the key in my palm, a million questions racing through my mind. Who had put it there? How had they gotten a copy? And most importantly, what would I find if I used it? I checked my watch. It was 9:15. I had promised to be at Stephanie's by 10. There was still time. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked purposefully across the driveway to the detached garage. The structure stood separate from our house, a fact that had never bothered me before, but now seemed significant somehow. This was Eric's private domain, a space I rarely entered. The key slid into the lock with surprising ease. I turned it, hearing the mechanical click that signaled the door was now unlocked. For a moment, I stood frozen, wondering if I should really go through with this. What if I was violating Eric's privacy for nothing? What if this was all an elaborate hoax? My phone chimed again. Another text from the unknown number. Did you find the key? You need to see what's inside. Now. Before it's too late. The urgency in those words propelled me forward. I pushed open the garage door and stepped inside. At first glance, everything looked normal. Eric's workbench stood against one wall, tools hanging neatly on the pegboard above it. His car was absent, presumably because he had driven to Jason's, as his note claimed. Cardboard boxes from our recent move were stacked in one corner, and various sports equipment lined another wall. I was about to turn around, feeling foolish for giving in to paranoia, when I noticed something odd. Behind Eric's workbench, partially hidden by a tarp, was a brand new set of luggage I had never seen before. Expensive-looking luggage, not the budget-friendly kind we usually purchased. My legs moved of their own accord, carrying me toward the discovery. I pulled back the tarp to reveal 2 large suitcases and a carry-on bag, all matching, all bearing price tags that made my eyes widen. Beside them lay a manila envelope unsealed. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and slid out its contents. Plane tickets. 2 first-class tickets to Bahamas departing tomorrow morning. Not in my name, in Eric's name and Stephanie's. The room seemed to tilt around me as I stared at the tickets, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There had to be a mistake. Maybe they were fake tickets, part of some bachelor party prank. Maybe there was another Stephanie in Eric's life that I didn't know about. Maybe. But the date of birth on Stephanie's ticket matched the one I knew belonged to my brother's fiancée. This was no mistake. I continued searching, driven by a desperate need to understand. Behind the workbench, I found a small fireproof safe I had never seen before. It was unlocked, and inside were bank statements for an account I didn't recognize in Eric's name only. The balance made me gasp. Over $100,000. Money that should have been in our joint savings account, money we had been saving for a down payment on a future vacation home. Next to the safe was a small jewelry box. Inside, I found expensive pieces I had never seen Eric purchase. For me, diamond earrings, a sapphire pendant, a platinum bracelet. A small card tucked among the jewelry read, "For our new beginning. All my love, E." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the card. This couldn't be happening. Eric and Stephanie, my husband and my brother's fiancée, it was too horrific to comprehend. Then I found the final piece of evidence, the one that removed all doubt. A folder containing printouts of text messages between Eric and Stephanie dating back almost 2 years. Messages filled with declarations of love, detailed plans for their future together, and explicit descriptions of their secret meetings. The most recent exchange had been just yesterday. Eric. Everything's set. After the ceremony, during the reception, we slip away separately. Meet at the airport hotel. Tomorrow morning, we're gone. Stephanie, what about Jason and Amanda? Won't they come looking for us? Eric, by the time they realize we're gone, we'll be thousands of miles away with new identities. The accounts are set up. We can start fresh, just like we planned. Stephanie, I love you. One more day of pretending, then forever together. I sank to the concrete floor, the evidence scattered around me as the full weight of the betrayal crashed down. My husband and my brother's fiancée had been having an affair for 2 years. They were planning to disappear together after the wedding, leaving Jason and me behind with shattered hearts and empty bank accounts. The perfect day, the perfect wedding, was nothing but an elaborate facade. And in less than 5 hours, my brother would unknowingly marry a woman who was planning to abandon him before the wedding night was over. The world around me seemed to fade as I sat on the cold concrete floor of the garage, surrounded by irrefutable evidence of double betrayal. The sunlight streaming through the small windows felt wrong, somehow too bright and cheerful for the darkness that had just entered my life. I could hear birds chirping outside, neighbors calling to each other, the normal sounds of a Saturday morning that continued despite my world crumbling. With shaking hands, I picked up the plane tickets again, hoping against hope that I had somehow misread them. But there they were, clear as day: Eric Matthews and Stephanie Collins, first class to Nassau, Bahamas, departing 8:30 tomorrow morning from Terminal B. The reservation included a luxury beachfront villa for 2 weeks, all expenses paid. The cost was staggering, likely funded by our stolen savings. I set the tickets down and reached for the folder of text messages again, forcing myself to read through more of them despite the pain each word inflicted. The messages revealed a timeline that made me sick to my stomach. Their affair had begun shortly after Stephanie moved back to town, around the time she and Jason had supposedly rekindled their relationship. Every milestone in my brother's renewed romance with Stephanie had been a lie, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to conceal her true relationship with my husband. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Eric had texted her the evening of Jason's proposal. "Just get through dinner with him, then come to me." "It worked," Stephanie had replied later that night. "He proposed just like we predicted." The look on his face when I said yes. I almost felt bad. Almost. Their callousness was breathtaking. They discussed Jason and me as if we were merely inconvenient obstacles to their happiness, not people who loved them, trusted them, built lives around them. I discovered printed emails detailing offshore accounts Eric had set up, transferring funds gradually over the past year. He had emptied our retirement accounts, sold stocks I didn't know we owned, and even taken out a second mortgage on our house, all without my knowledge or consent. The total amount he had siphoned away was just over $300,000, our entire financial future. In a small lockbox hidden behind some paint cans, I found new passports. Eric's featured his photo, but under a different name, Daniel Porter. Stephanie's showed her with dyed brown hair, identified as Elizabeth Porter. They had planned this down to the smallest detail, prepared to completely vanish and assume new identities. As I continued searching, I found a burner phone tucked inside a toolbox. The message history showed dozens of exchanges between Eric and Stephanie, coordinating their meetings and finalizing their escape plan. There were also messages to someone named Marcus about paperwork and clean identities, suggesting they had hired someone to help with their new documentation. The most devastating discovery came in the form of a handwritten letter from Stephanie to Eric, dated just 1 week ago. "My love, in a few days I'll walk down the aisle toward Jason, but my heart will be looking for you among the groomsmen. Every vow I speak will be a lie. Every smile, a performance. Just remember our plan when you see me in my wedding dress. That white gown isn't for him, it's my final costume in this charade we've had to endure. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. Soon we can stop pretending to love people we outgrew long ago. I count the hours until we can be our true selves together at last. Forever yours, S." The letter was sprayed with perfume, the same scent I had detected on Eric when he came home last night. I crumpled it in my fist, tears blurring my vision. How had I been so blind? How had Jason and I both missed the deception happening right before our eyes? My phone buzzed again, startling me from my shocked stupor. It was now 10:30, and Stephanie's mother had texted asking where I was. The bridal party was waiting. I was supposed to be helping my brother's fiancée prepare for her wedding, a wedding that was nothing but a cruel charade. I also had 3 missed calls from the unknown number that had sent me the warning texts. As I stared at my phone screen trying to process what to do next, it lit up with another incoming text. Did you find everything? Now you understand why you can't let this wedding happen. Call me when you're ready to talk. My name is Megan, I'm Stephanie's friend from college. I can't be part of this anymore. A friend of Stephanie's had been the one to warn me. Someone who knew about the plan but couldn't stomach the betrayal any longer. I immediately called the number, my heart pounding in my chest. Hello? A female voice answered after the first ring, sounding anxious. This is Amanda, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I found everything. Thank God, Megan replied, relief evident in her tone. I've been trying to get through to you since yesterday. I couldn't let them go through with this. How long have you known? I asked, struggling to keep my emotions in check. About 6 months, she admitted. Stephanie told me when she was drunk at her birthday party. She thought I would find it romantic, this forbidden love affair and grand escape plan. When I told her it was wrong, she swore me to secrecy, said they were too far into the plan to back out now. Why tell me now? Why not months ago? Megan was silent for a moment. I tried to convince her to call it off, to be honest with you and Jason, but she wouldn't listen. Then last week, I overheard her on the phone with Eric laughing about how they had cleaned out your savings accounts. That's when I knew I had to do something. No one deserves what they're planning to do to you and your brother. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths to steady myself. What am I supposed to do now? The wedding is in 3 hours. You have to stop it, Megan said firmly. If you don't, Jason will be legally tied to someone who's planning to abandon and bankrupt him tomorrow. Not to mention the emotional devastation when he realizes what's happened. She was right. As much as the thought of causing a scene at my brother's wedding horrified me, allowing it to proceed would be far crueler. Will you help me? I asked, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. I can't do this alone. I'll meet you at the church, Megan promised. I know where Stephanie hid duplicate copies of some of the evidence in case Eric tried to double-cross her. We can use those if needed. After ending the call, I gathered the most damning evidence into my bag, the plane tickets, bank statements, and several pages of printed text messages. Then I locked the garage behind me, the key feeling heavy in my palm. I sat in my car for several long minutes staring at our house, the home I had thought was built on love and trust. Everything looked the same outside, but nothing would ever be the same again. Taking a deep breath, I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, heading not toward Stephanie's parents' house, but toward the venue where in a few hours I would have to break my brother's heart to save him from an even greater pain. The drive to the church was a blur, my mind cycling through disbelief, rage, and heartbreak with each passing mile. Traffic lights changed, cars moved around me, but I barely registered any of it. My thoughts were consumed by fragments of conversations with Eric over the past 2 years, analyzing them for clues I might have missed, signs that should have warned me. The late nights at work, the unexplained absences, the decreasing intimacy, the way he always seemed to have an excuse to be near Stephanie at family gatherings. It all made perfect, horrible sense now. I parked in the church lot, which was still mostly empty this early before the ceremony. The florists were unloading vans of arrangements, and catering staff bustled around the reception hall next door. Everyone was preparing for a celebration that, if I had anything to do with it, would never take place. Checking my phone, I saw multiple missed calls and increasingly concerned text messages from the bridal party. I couldn't bring myself to respond. What could I possibly say? Sorry I'm late, just discovered my husband and the bride are having an affair and planning to flee the country together. I spotted an unfamiliar woman sitting on a bench near the church entrance, nervously checking her watch. As I approached, she stood up, her expression a mix of sympathy and anxiety. Amanda, she asked tentatively. I nodded, taking in her appearance. Megan was around my age, with short auburn hair and kind eyes that currently reflected my own distress. I'm Megan, she said, extending her hand. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Thank you for warning me, I replied, shaking her hand. I would never have checked the garage otherwise. We moved to a quiet corner of the garden beside the church, sitting on a stone bench partially hidden by ornamental shrubs. There, Megan filled in the gaps of what she knew about Eric and Stephanie's relationship and their elaborate escape plan. They met at your housewarming party 2 years ago, she explained. Stephanie told me there was an immediate connection. They exchanged numbers that night, supposedly for some work-related advice Eric could give her. I remember that party, I said softly. I was the one who introduced them. Megan winced at that detail before continuing. According to Stephanie, they started meeting for coffee, which turned into lunches, which turned into more. By the time she reconnected with Jason, she was already deeply involved with Eric. So why get engaged to my brother at all? Why not just be with Eric? The plan was Eric's idea originally. He told Stephanie that a sudden divorce would mean splitting assets with you, losing half of everything. But if they disappeared after a legitimate event like a wedding, when everyone would expect them to be away on a honeymoon anyway, they would have more time to cover their tracks. My stomach turned at the calculated cruelty of it all. So Jason was just a pawn. A convenient cover story? Megan nodded grimly. Stephanie convinced herself it wasn't that bad because she and Jason had history. She told herself he would move on quickly. Find someone who truly loved him. And what about me? I asked, my voice breaking slightly. Did Eric ever mention how I would feel being abandoned? Megan looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Stephanie said Eric told her you were too focused on your career anyway, that the marriage had grown stale for him. The casual dismissal of our 5-year relationship, the rewriting of our shared history to justify his betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Every memory now felt tainted, called into question. I have to tell Jason, I said, straightening my shoulders with newfound resolve. He deserves to know before he makes vows to someone who has no intention of honoring them. Stephanie will deny everything, Megan warned. She's a convincing liar, Amanda. I've seen her talk her way out of situations that seemed impossible. That's why I brought evidence, I replied, patting my bag. And you said you have more. Megan nodded, pulling out her phone. I took screenshots of messages Stephanie sent me about their plan. And I have photos of them together from times when they claimed to be elsewhere. I also know about the safety deposit box at First National Bank, where she keeps her duplicate documentation. Jason could get a court order to access it if needed. We spent the next hour strategizing, deciding the best approach would be to confront Jason privately before the ceremony. The last thing I wanted was to humiliate my brother in front of 200 wedding guests. He deserved to make his own decision about how to handle the situation. As we talked, my phone continued to buzz with increasingly frantic messages. Finally, one from Jason himself appeared. Amanda, where are you? Everyone's worried. Are you okay? Please call me. My heart ached at the genuine concern in his message. In just a few hours, his world would be shattered. And there was nothing I could do to prevent that pain. I could only try to minimize the damage. I need to call him, I told Megan. But I can't tell him over the phone. I need to see him in person. She nodded in understanding. I'll wait here. The bridal party doesn't know I'm in town. Stephanie thinks I couldn't make it to the wedding. With trembling fingers, I dialed Jason's number. He answered immediately. Amanda, where have you been? The girls said you never showed up at the house. I'm sorry, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Something came up. Something important. I need to talk to you before the ceremony. Can it wait? He asked, confusion evident in his tone. We're kind of on a schedule here. No, it can't wait. Please, Jason. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial. There must have been something in my voice that conveyed the gravity of the situation because after a brief pause, he sighed. Okay. I'm at the church already in the groom's suite. Can you come here? I'll be right there, I promised, ending the call. I turned to Megan, my heart pounding. I'm going to tell him now. Wish me luck. Do you want me to come with you? She offered. I shook my head. This needs to be just family first. But stay close. I might need your testimony afterward. Walking into the church felt like entering a dream state. The beautiful flower arrangements, the elegant pew decorations, the soft music playing in the background all felt like cruel props in a tragedy. Ushers were beginning to arrive, putting on boutonnieres and reviewing seating charts, completely unaware of the storm about to break. I made my way to the groom's suite, each step feeling heavier than the last. Outside the door, I paused, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Then I knocked. "Come in," Jason called. I pushed open the door to find my brother standing before a full-length mirror adjusting his bow tie. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, his face glowing with happiness and anticipation. The sight nearly broke me. "There you are," he exclaimed, turning toward me with a smile that quickly faded when he saw my expression. "Amanda, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for support. "Jason, I need to tell you something. And it's going to hurt. But you need to know before this wedding goes any further." His face grew serious as he moved toward me, concern etched in his features. "You're scaring me. What's happened?" With hands that wouldn't stop shaking, I opened my bag and pulled out the evidence I'd gathered. This morning, I received a warning message about Eric. I found these in his private garage. I watched my brother's expression change from confusion to disbelief to horror as he examined the plane tickets, the bank statements, the text messages between his fiancée and my husband. His face drained of color, and he sank onto a nearby chair, the papers clutched in his trembling hands. "This can't be real," he whispered, but I could see in his eyes that he already knew it was. Stephanie and Eric. For 2 years while we were planning our wedding, I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I had no idea until today." He looked up at me, his eyes reflecting the same betrayal I felt. They were going to leave tomorrow, just disappear. "Yes," I confirmed gently. After the reception, they had it all planned out. For a long moment, Jason said nothing, just stared at the evidence in his hands. Then, in a voice so quiet I barely heard it, he asked, "What do we do now?" The next hour passed in a whirlwind of hushed conversations and tearful revelations. After the initial shock, Jason had moved quickly through disbelief to a cold, contained fury I had never seen in him before. We called our parents, who arrived at the church in record time, their own animosity toward each other temporarily set aside in the face of this crisis. "I want to confront her," Jason said, pacing the groom's suite like a caged animal. "I want to see her face when she realizes we know everything." "We need to be smart about this," our father cautioned, his lawyer's mind already working through the implications. "If we handle it wrong, they could still get away with the money." "I don't care about the money," Jason exploded. "They've been laughing at us planning this for 2 years. 2 years of my life wasted on a lie." Our mother moved to his side, placing a steadying hand on his arm. "We care about the money, honey. You might not think so now, but you'll need it to rebuild your life after this. Amanda, too." She was right, of course. The practical considerations couldn't be ignored even in our emotional devastation. Eric and Stephanie had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from us collectively. That couldn't go unpunished. While our parents called their respective lawyers, I slipped out to find Megan, who was waiting anxiously in the garden. "He knows I told her. We're trying to figure out what to do next." "Stephanie's already here," she informed me, checking her phone. "She just posted in the bridal party group chat asking where you are. They're starting to get dressed." My absence from the bridal preparations had not gone unnoticed. Text messages continued to flood my phone, concern from the bridesmaids, irritation from Stephanie's mother, and increasingly worried questions from Stephanie herself. The irony of her pretending to care about my whereabouts while planning to destroy my family was not lost on me. "Should I go to her?" I asked Megan. "Pretend everything's normal until we're ready to confront them." Megan shook her head firmly. "Don't put yourself through that. She'll see right through you. Besides, I think she's already suspicious. She's been texting Eric nonstop for the last hour. That made me wonder about my husband's whereabouts. I hadn't seen him since arriving at the church, though his car was in the parking lot. Was he hiding somewhere with Stephanie making last-minute adjustments to their escape plan? The thought made my blood boil. Back in the groom's suite, a plan was taking shape. Jason had made a decision that surprised me with its boldness. "The ceremony starts in 45 minutes, he said, his voice steadier now. "Guests are already being seated. I want to go through with it." What I gasped, certain I had misheard him. "Not the actual marriage," he clarified, seeing my shock. "But I want to start the ceremony. Let everyone get seated. Let Stephanie walk down that aisle thinking she's won. And then when the minister asks if anyone objects to this union, that's when we'll do it." Our father frowned. "Jason, that's unnecessarily theatrical. We could just cancel now, tell everyone there's been a family emergency." "No," Jason insisted, a hard edge to his voice I'd never heard before. "They plan to humiliate us in front of everyone we know. They deserve the same courtesy." I understood his desire for public justice even as I worried about the emotional cost. "Are you sure you can go through with it?" Standing at that altar, watching her walk toward you, knowing it's all a lie. "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied, his jaw set with determination. "Will you stand with me, Amanda, when the time comes?" How could I refuse? Despite my reservations about the plan, Jason needed me. We had always protected each other, and today would be no different. "Of course I will." With our course decided, we quickly set things in motion. Our parents would be seated in the front row as planned. I would take my place with the bridal party, having sent a message that I had been delayed by car trouble but was now on my way. Jason would stand at the altar, the perfect picture of a happy groom, while our father's private investigator documented everything from the back of the church. As I finally entered the bride's preparation room, I was met with a flurry of relieved exclamations and hurried hands helping me into my bridesmaid dress. Stephanie was already fully dressed in her wedding gown, looking breathtakingly beautiful and completely untroubled by conscience. "Where have you been?" she demanded, her tone a perfect imitation of friendly concern. "We were about to send out a search party." "Car trouble," I repeated the lie we had agreed upon, avoiding her eyes as I fastened my earrings. "All fixed now. Sorry for the panic." She studied me in the mirror, perhaps sensing something off in my demeanor. "Is everything okay? You seem distracted." "Just stressed about being late," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's not every day my big brother gets married." The words tasted like poison on my tongue, but Stephanie seemed to accept them. She turned back to her reflection, making minor adjustments to her veil, completely unaware that her carefully constructed facade was about to come crashing down. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of final preparations. Flowers were distributed last minute, makeup touches applied, champagne poured, and quickly consumed to steady nerves. Through it all, I moved as if underwater, going through the motions while my mind remained fixated on what was to come. As we lined up for the processional, I caught sight of Eric for the first time that day. He stood with the other groomsmen, handsome in his tuxedo, laughing at something another man had said. When our eyes met across the church vestibule, he smiled and winked at me, the picture of an adoring husband. The sheer audacity of his performance made me physically ill. The music began, signaling the start of the ceremony. One by one, the bridesmaids and groomsmen paired up and began their walk down the aisle. When it was my turn, I took my assigned place beside Eric, forcing myself to accept his arm and not recoil from his touch. "You look beautiful," he whispered as we began our walk. "Everything okay? You disappeared this morning." "I know exactly where I disappeared to," I replied softly, feeling him stiffen beside me. "And I know exactly where you and Stephanie plan to disappear to tomorrow." His step faltered almost imperceptibly, but he quickly recovered his smile, never wavering as we continued toward the altar. "I don't know what you're talking about," he murmured through clenched teeth. "Bahamas," I whispered back as we reached the front and separated to our respective sides. "First class. Suite at the Royal Bahamian. Ring any bells, Eric?" The color drained from his face as he took his position, his eyes darting to Stephanie, who was now appearing at the back of the church on her father's arm. I saw him make a subtle gesture toward her, but it was too late for warnings. The bridal march had begun, and all eyes were on the beautiful bride floating down the aisle toward her waiting groom. Jason stood tall and straight at the altar, his face an impressive mask of joy that only I could see through. As Stephanie reached him and her father placed her hand in his eye, saw her smile falter slightly at the coldness in his eyes. The minister began the ceremony with traditional words about love, commitment, and sacred vows, each phrase now laden with irony. I watched Stephanie and Eric exchange nervous glances as the ceremony progressed, clearly sensing that something was wrong but powerless to stop what had been set in motion. Finally, the moment arrived. The minister looked out over the congregation and spoke the fateful words. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. A heavy silence fell over the church. Then Jason himself turned to face the guests. I have something to say, he announced, his voice steady and clear. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd as Jason reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the plane tickets I had discovered that morning. My bride has other plans for tomorrow, he said, holding them up for all to see. She won't be honeymooning with me, but rather flying to the Bahamas with my sister's husband. Gasps and exclamations erupted throughout the church. Stephanie's face went pale, her bouquet trembling in her hands. Jason, what are you doing? She hissed, reaching for the tickets. He stepped back, turning to address the shocked guests again. Stephanie and Eric have been having an affair for 2 years. They planned this wedding as a cover for their escape. They've stolen our money, our trust, and our time, but they won't steal another day from us. Eric moved forward then, his handsome face contorted with anger and panic. This is ridiculous. Jason's clearly having a breakdown. But I was ready. I stepped forward, my own evidence in hand. We have proof. Text messages, bank records, duplicate passports. They were going to disappear after the reception, leaving us bankrupt and heartbroken. Megan emerged from the back of the church, joining us at the altar. I can confirm everything they're saying. Stephanie confided in me about their plan months ago. I have my own evidence to add. The church had erupted into chaos by this point. Stephanie's parents looked shell-shocked, her mother sobbing into her hands. Our father had moved to stand beside Jason, a supportive hand on his shoulder, while our mother watched the scene unfold with grim satisfaction. Stephanie finally dropped all pretense, her beautiful face transforming with rage. Fine, yes, it's all true. Can you blame me? Jason was always second best, always the safe option. Eric and I have something real, something passionate. Something built on lies and theft, Jason countered calmly. Something that ends today. Eric made a sudden move toward the side exit, clearly hoping to escape in the confusion, but was blocked by the private investigator and 2 off-duty police officers our father had arranged to have present. Going somewhere, one of them asked, stepping into his path. Perhaps to the airport. I think your travel plans might need to be delayed. As Eric was escorted back to the altar, I finally allowed myself to meet his eyes directly. How could you? I asked, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. 5 years of marriage thrown away for what a fantasy escape that was never going to work. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine emotion cross his face. Not remorse for his actions, but regret at being caught. You wouldn't understand, he said dismissively. We were never truly happy. You know that. No, I didn't know that, I replied softly. Because, unlike you, I meant my vows. With that final exchange, the confrontation reached its crescendo. The minister, clearly at a loss for how to proceed with a ceremony that had devolved so dramatically, cleared his throat and suggested everyone take a moment to collect themselves. Jason turned to the stunned guests, his dignity intact despite the extraordinary circumstances. I apologize for bringing you all here under false pretenses. Clearly, there will be no wedding today. Please join us in the reception hall for the meal that's been prepared. No sense letting good food go to waste. His gallant attempt at normalcy in the face of such betrayal brought tears to my eyes. That was my brother, always making the best of impossible situations. Always thinking of others, even when his own heart was breaking. As the guests began to file out in shocked silence, many stopping to offer words of support to Jason, I found myself standing alone at the altar, watching as Eric was quietly led away to discuss the financial aspects of his crimes with our father's lawyer. Stephanie had fled to the bride's room, her mother and bridesmaids following in confused distress. The perfect white wedding had imploded spectacularly, leaving behind the jagged shards of broken trust and shattered dreams. Yet amid the wreckage, I felt the first faint stirring of something unexpected relief. The truth, however, painful, was finally out in the open. The deception was over. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like the first step toward healing. 6 months have passed since that fateful day at the church. 6 months of rebuilding, reclaiming, and slowly healing from wounds that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. The seasons have changed, summer fading to fall, then winter, and now the first tentative blooms of spring are appearing, a fitting metaphor for the new growth in my own life. The aftermath of the wedding that wasn't was as difficult as you might imagine. Jason and I both filed for divorce, a parallel journey through legal paperwork and emotional turmoil that brought us even closer as siblings. We leaned on each other heavily during those first raw weeks, taking turns being the strong one when the other faltered. Eric and Stephanie did not get their dream escape to the Bahamas. Instead, they faced the consequences of their actions: criminal charges for the financial fraud, civil lawsuits for the stolen funds, and the complete loss of trust from everyone who had ever cared about them. Eric lost his job when his firm discovered he had been falsifying timesheets to create alibis for his meetings with Stephanie. She in turn was fired from her position at an accounting firm when her employers learned of her role in the scheme. Through our father's legal connections, we were able to recover most of the stolen money, though the process was lengthy and painful. Each bank statement, each court appearance, each signature on yet another document served as a fresh reminder of the betrayal. There were days when getting out of bed seemed impossible, when the weight of what had happened threatened to crush me completely. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. I moved out of the house I had shared, with Eric finding a small apartment closer to downtown. The space was entirely mine, decorated according to my tastes alone, a fresh start in every sense. Jason did something similar, selling the condo he had purchased with Stephanie and buying a fixer-upper across town that gave him a project to focus on, a tangible way to rebuild. Perhaps the most unexpected development was my friendship with Megan. The woman who had been brave enough to warn me about the plot became a central figure in my recovery. Her honesty and moral courage stood in such stark contrast to Stephanie's deception that I found myself drawn to her genuine nature. We began meeting for coffee, then dinner, then weekend hikes, our connection growing from shared trauma into something truly valuable. "I still feel guilty sometimes," she confessed one evening as we sat on my apartment balcony watching the sunset. "If I had spoken up sooner, maybe you and Jason would have been spared some pain." "You spoke up when it mattered most," I assured her. "Many people wouldn't have said anything at all. You saved us from something much worse." And it was true. Had Eric and Stephanie succeeded in their plan, the emotional and financial devastation would have been exponentially greater. Jason and I might have spent years searching for answers, blaming ourselves, never knowing the truth. Megan's intervention, though it led to a painful confrontation, was ultimately an act of tremendous kindness. Diana, my old college friend who worked with Eric, reached out after everything happened. "I suspected something wasn't right," she admitted when we met for lunch. Eric had been behaving strangely at work, taking long lunches, being secretive about his phone. I should have said something. "We all missed the signs," I told her without bitterness. "They were very good at hiding." Reconnecting with friends became an important part of my healing process. I realized how isolated I had become in my marriage, how much of myself I had subsumed into being Eric's wife, rather than simply Amanda. Now I was rediscovering old passions and interests, remembering the woman I had been before, and finding new aspects of myself in the process. 3 months after the wedding debacle, I took a leap of faith and accepted a job offer from a marketing firm in Chicago. It meant leaving my hometown, starting fresh in a new city, but the opportunity felt right. Jason supported my decision completely. "We are not going to let them define our lives," he said as he helped me pack up my apartment. "They took enough from us already." His resilience inspired me daily. He had channeled his hurt into productive outlets, volunteering with a financial literacy program to help others avoid similar frauds, throwing himself into renovating his house, even cautiously beginning to date again. The fact that he could still open himself to the possibility of love after such profound betrayal was nothing short of miraculous to me. My own heart remained more guarded. The idea of trusting someone enough to be vulnerable again seemed impossible most days. But I was learning to trust myself again, to honor my instincts and recognize my worth independent of any relationship. That felt like progress enough for now. As for Eric and Stephanie, their grand romance didn't survive the harsh light of reality. According to mutual acquaintances, they split up within weeks of being caught, each blaming the other for the plan's failure. Last I heard, Eric had moved to Arizona to live with a cousin working a retail job under the terms of his probation. Stephanie had retreated to her parents' home in another state, her reputation in our community irreparably damaged. I wish I could say I've forgiven them completely, that I've achieved some perfect state of emotional enlightenment, where their actions no longer have power over me. The truth is more complicated. There are still days when anger resurfaces, when I find myself wondering how someone I loved so deeply could have betrayed me so thoroughly. There are still nights when I wake from dreams where everything is as it was before, only to remember the reality upon waking. But those moments grow fewer with time. The sharp edges of pain have begun to smooth like sea glass worn by persistent waves. What remains is a deeper understanding of both human frailty and human strength, a hard-won wisdom I would never have chosen but now cannot imagine being without. If there's a lesson in all of this, perhaps it's about the nature of truth. How it can hurt terribly in the moment but heal us in the long run. How living authentically, even through pain, is infinitely preferable to living within a beautiful lie. How our capacity to begin again after devastation is perhaps our most remarkable human quality. Or maybe the lesson is simpler: trust your instincts. That morning, when I received the text message, something in me already knew. Some quiet voice had been whispering warnings I had refused to hear. Now I listen to that voice. I honor it. And in doing so, I honor myself. 6 months ago, I stood frozen in a garage, my world collapsing around me as I discovered my husband's betrayal. Today, I stand on my own, stronger than I knew I could be, facing forward toward a future entirely of my own making. The path hasn't been easy, and I know there are still difficult days ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely excited to see where it leads. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed the trajectory of your life? A betrayal that ultimately led to growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and healing. Remember, even in our darkest moments, we are never as alone as we feel. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to face your own truths, whatever they may be.